Broadcasting from Oklahoma, the tornado capital of the world, home of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the University of Oklahoma Sooners. This is the Curated Experience Show, a weekly podcast about the customer experience with viewpoints you will not hear anywhere else. And now your host, author, and customer experience expert, Amos Tanuma.
Welcome to the Curated Experience. I am your host, Amos Tanuma. And I've got a guest on with me today. I've got Zach Thomas. Zach, making sure you're still with me.
I am here, absolutely.
Hey, so let me do a quick intro of Zach, and Zach can sort of add more to it. So Zach is an author, a coach, a speaker himself, an entrepreneur. He's involved with Chick-fil-A and runs franchises there, and he'll get into some of that. So really excited. And one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on was a lot of your work around leadership and how it impacts organizations. So welcome to the show, Zach, and I'm happy you decided to join us.
Thanks, Amos. It's an honor to be here.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. And for those of you listening, we'll post Zach's info. He is active online and on social media, so you'll be able to connect with him directly. But I wanna start by talking broadly about, when I think about companies, they have plenty of constituents, right? So employees, customers, shareholders, So let's just limit it to three. And I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer, but I would love your perspective. When you do work with companies and all of that, how do you encourage them to think about the employee, customers, and let's call it shareholders or ownership? How do you advise them in how to rank them? Not like, you have to please all of them, but how do you encourage them? Which one do you tell them to start first? Which one second? Do you have a point of view on that age-old debate?
Well, it's an interesting question. I'd tell you, as a Chick-fil-A franchisee, I have one franchise restaurant right now. And one of the things that I tell, as the owner of the business, one of the things that I tell my team members is that we are all customers to each other. And so, when you look at one of the inside my organization, I have a front of house staff and a back of house staff, and currently right now we are only running drive-through operations, and so, but we have those two components of the business, and a lot of times there's animosity that can come up between the two, and
healthy friction, right?
Yep. And even between the AM staff and the PM staff.
Yeah.
And, like, hey, y'all didn't set me up for success when I came over to take for the night shift and that sort of thing. And so, but I've tried to shift their mindset to think about, like, they are each other's customer. And so not only is it the customer that's coming through the drive-through line or when we open back up our dining rooms, in the dining room, right. But, because that is obviously our customer. And one of the mindsets that and we talk more about this in a minute, but one of the mindsets that I try to put in my team members during our vision and value session, which I do with each one, is that the customer pays your paycheck, not me. I may sign it, but the customer pays your paycheck. And I think that mindset shift when they think about, well, I want to do things to keep them coming back because that's who's paying my paycheck. We'll get to that in a moment, but kind of going along with what I was saying a second ago is just that when you change their mindset to also incorporate that as a front of house staff member, my customer is the kitchen, and then as the kitchen, my customer is the front of house, and how they can serve each other and work together on customer service, right? Yeah. Like, and so
you're speaking my language. I mean, I think, and we didn't rehearse this, and I haven't talked to you before, but you're exactly right. What I like to espouse is your first customer are your fellow employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before the customer ever walks through the door, before you ever deal with any external customer, you've dealt with coworkers, and that's where the experience starts, right? Like you can't turn it on and off. So I love what you're saying in like, treat, AM versus PM or whatever, front of the house, back of the house is your first customers, and then you just carry it on through, right, to external customers. And by definition, if you do all of that, I think shareholders would be happy, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Awesome.
So,
I want to get into a little bit about get into sort of your methodology. I looked into some of your work, and the way I want you to think about this is there are haves and have-nots in this whole topic of leadership and the customer experience and the employee experience. I'd love to hear from you, what you've seen of, what separate those who have and those who are good at this, if you will, and those who are not. What are those qualities and systems you've seen that separate the two groups?
well, I would think that for the most part, it really comes down to the questions of why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? If I'm in customer service, why am I doing that? Is it just for a paycheck, or is it because I desire to serve other people and make other people's lives better? And so I think that's really the core. That's one of the things that I do in my interview process, is that I'm really trying to discern that through the interview process, and that do they have a natural desire to serve and put others before themselves. And I think that's, just a natural wiring for some people.
Right.
And I think that is a great predictor of whether they are a have or a have not, to use your language.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really kind of the core of it. What's their why? And one of the things that I share when I speak to a lot of students as well, especially in my community, and I have this talk that I do quite often, and I'll condense it down into just a sentence or two here. But I tell them, in school you learn all the questions of who, what, when, where, why, and how. And as young folks, the question that occupies their mind first is usually like, what am I going to do? What's my career? What am I going to do? And they get so fixated on that. And then it's like, well, when am I going to do it? And they get impatient because we live in an instant gratification culture and all that. And then it's like, well, how am I going to do it? And then they kind of get overwhelmed by, college degree and, what am I going to major in and all that, and how am I going to get this job, and how am I going to, the American dream, all that stuff. So that's, that's what, that's when, that's how. And then I think though, the most important questions that we eventually get to, some people much later on in life, but the sooner that they can get to that question, the better, is what I just talked about a minute ago, is why, why. And Simon Sinek, made that question famous recently.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't think that's the most important question. I think the most important question is who. Who am I going to be? Who am I going to become? Because, once you figure out the why, and that's kind of the purpose behind what you're doing, the who is like, that's what gives you meaning. That's like, I know that I want to be a person that was known for fill in the blank, right? Like caring for people or making other people's lives better, or, and so that's the who question. And that's all about me and as an individual, or what is it that I want to be known for? Dallas Willard's one of my favorite authors. And, he said that the most important thing about a man or woman is not what he or she does, but who he or she becomes.
That's powerful. I haven't heard that. If you're just joining, we're chatting with Zach Thomas. Zach is with Leader Farming, and he's a Chick-fil-A franchise operator and author, a speaker, and we are having a conversation around leadership and growing an organization. So let me shift gears a little bit and talk to you about how did you come to this place where you have this this farm strategy, FARM strategy that you have. Talk a little bit about some of the things that happened in your career or in life, maybe mistakes or things. What got you here? How did you get to a place where you said, you know what, there's something missing here? How did you come about? How did you come to this place?
Yeah. So a little background. So I grew up on a farm, and so, you know, I'm grateful for my upbringing, and I love the idea of farming. And I tell people, I give you two kind of summaries up front. I tell people, you know, some farmers grow corn, some grow potatoes. I grow leaders. That's what I do. And so it's my chosen crop, right? And here's another phrase that I'll give you. I tell people all the time that my company is just a leadership development company that just happens to sell chicken. And so, you know, when you think about whatever you're doing, whether you're selling chicken or any other, you know, widget or whatever, like if you shift your mindset to think about becoming a person that grows leaders and develops people. And so one day I was literally driving down the road and I was incredibly frustrated with the turnover that I was fighting. And it just, you know, it just seemed like that, you can never make people happy with even giving them pay raises and all that kind of stuff. And obviously my industry, being in the quick service food industry, for the most part, it's people's first job. And very few people come knocking on my door wanting to work for me saying, hey, I want to work here for the rest of my life. Like it just doesn't happen. Well, it has happened, but it's rare, right? Yeah. And so, you know, very few people think that way. And this, you know, hey, this is my first job, or this is kind of I do get quite a few people that this is their kind of retirement job. They've had a career, they've got retirement, and they literally just want to serve people. And so those folks are wonderful, and I'm very pleased and happy to have them in my organization. But I was driving down the road one day and I was passing McEachern High School. McEachern's this major, huge high school right outside of where my old franchise was located. Right. And they had this endowment fund and this huge stadium and everything. And I just remember thinking, I wonder what his name's Coach Dorsey. I wonder what Coach Dorsey, you know, does when he's thinking about players that have to leave after their senior year. Like, you know, his best players, right? I mean, typically your seniors are your seasoned starters, your best players. And every year, no matter what he does, they leave. Like they have to leave. And every year, no matter what he does, he has to have freshmen and new players. And he has to think about his organization, a team that way. Like he has to embrace turnover no matter what he does. He doesn't have a choice. And then I thought about the next level. I started thinking about college sports, and it's the same thing. And the question that you start thinking about is that, you know, there are some colleges that just have amazingly sustainable winning programs. Right. And the question is why, right? Like why? What is different about them? And so I began to, you know, just research a little bit more about that. And then I kind of went to the next level and started thinking about major league and professional sports. And then it worked out really great because in terms of my brand here, that baseball, right? They call their minor league teams their farm teams, and of course that's a term that came from years ago, where major league players would kind of jokingly say that they're growing players down on in these small towns down on the farm like corn.
Right.
And so they call them, it's a colloquial term, but they call them farm teams. And so I began to think about that, and like as a major league, or as a farm team coach or minor league coach, like what is my primary goal? My primary goal is not only to win games, right? Like, I mean, you want to win, you're a team. Like, that's part of the deal. You have to win games. You have to create a team that works together well and wins games. But you also have to and want to create players for the major leagues. Like, that's part of your job description. And so what if I shifted my mindset to begin thinking like a farm team coach? What if I said, my goal is to create talent for the major leagues and win games? And so that whole mindset shift, when I began to just release this false control over
churn, right? You wanted lower churn, want everyone to stay forever. That's kind of the default. Then you feel a sense of failure. They're leaving, but it's embracing that, right?
Yep. So just embracing the idea of turnover, and ironically, the opposite happened. My turnover got so much lower. Because people didn't feel guilted or manipulated to stay. Like, they knew that they were free to go, and they knew that I had their best interest at heart, and they know that I'm developing them, and I'm helping them grow and become the best version of themselves. And they see Chick-fil-A as an opportunity to build their resume and also help them grow as an individual. But in turn, they're giving 100%. Like, they're giving their best, which when they leave, they're actually leaving a trail of high performance in my organization for other people to follow. And so, and another major thing here is that think about this. Okay. So if you played baseball, if you were a baseball player and you were coming out of high school, and here in Atlanta, we have several minor league teams, farm teams, right. and one is local here, just up the road, the Rome Braves. And let's just say, and I don't really keep up with their statistics, but let's just say theoretically that let's say the Rome Braves are doing, I don't even think they've started their season this year, but let's just say they're doing amazingly well, right. And they're like in the playoffs for the minor league World Series, and they're doing great, and their track record is producing like a lot of people for the major leagues, right? They're producing talent left and right for the major leagues. People are getting drafted and pulled up all the time. And then there's the Columbus Catfish, which is a team that nobody's ever heard of, and they're a feeder team for the Los Angeles Dodgers, or used to be. And you're a high school baseball player. You're at the top of your game, and you get a phone call from the Rome Braves, right, and the Columbus Catfish. And from what you understand, the Columbus Catfish haven't sent anybody up to the major leagues in quite some time. Right. They're not winning games.
Yep.
But then the Rome Braves are winning games like crazy, and they're sending people to the major leagues all the time. Which one are you going to choose?
No brainer, right?
Right. And so what if the talent out there looking at your company saw you as a minor league team, a farm team that's producing talent for the major leagues and winning games? And so what it does is it creates this perpetual cycle of opportunity within your organization, and it attracts talent. And so it's very, very counterintuitive, but it has worked for my organization, and it continues to work for other organizations that have embraced this idea. So that's kind of the philosophy and how you kind of get past the norm of being so fixated on, fighting turnover and that sort of thing. And then what I do is I kind of walk through the farm strategy and how that breaks down and helping people do that.
No,
So
that's amazing. I want to end with a question I like to ask a lot of my guests, which is talk to me about two areas. One, some influential books that you read either a long time ago or recently that were like, man, this was a game changer for me. And then secondarily, talk about some practices, some things you do, some behaviors that folks can sort of learn from to help them get better and smarter.
Yeah, so I'm always a little cautious in this area.
Outside of your book, of course.
Yeah.
Aside from Leader Farming, which is book available and folks can go purchase it.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of get like, man, I read this book, I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever.
Right.
It was that moment that I was like, right.
Yeah. So here's what I would say is that I'm always a little cautious when that question's asked because, everybody has got a stack of books, right? That like I haven't read, and it's like, man, it's just overwhelming. And so the way I like to answer that question is honestly, find people that you know and you trust and just stick with them. And just and so be very choosy with your who you allow to speak into your life, because if you've got like 500 voices speaking into your life, you're not really hearing a lot. And
noise,
right. And so rather than going wide, go deep. And so I will share, rather than books, I will share two authors that have had the most influence on my life and just really influenced my writing and my leadership and everything. So the first author is Tim Elmore with Growing Leaders, and you can find him at growingleaders.com. Tim writes on the generations and has done a lot of generation research. He writes about he wrote about Gen Z and Gen Y, and he's got a plethora of books. His series, I guess you would call it's called Habitudes, which is habits or images that create habits and attitudes, and his primary audience is the education community. He works with a lot of schools and colleges and everything. But one of the things that, and I was in the military for 10 and a half years. So,
thank you for your service, by the way.
My pleasure. I would say that following Tim's work has given me a tactical advantage in business. And I went to one of his leadership conferences early on, and Tim has become a personal friend and a mentor these days. But years ago, I went to one of his conferences, and I was like one of three business people in the entire room of like 300 people.
Ooh,
everybody else was, they were educators. They were educators, and they were, and I'm like, man, there needs to be more business people here. Like, people need to be listening to this. And Tim was, he's really studying these kids that were in school, and like, they're my future employees.
Right.
And so that's really what has given me a tactical advantage over the years. And Tim is always staying ahead of the curve there. And so I'm already looking at, my next generation of employees and starting to think about them, not just who's here now.
Right.
And the other author that has had the most influence on my life, or I'd say the other organization that has had the most influence is a ministry called Ransomed Heart Ministries out of Colorado. And John Eldridge is has written quite a few books there. He's the president of that ministry, and Morgan Snyder is publishing a book that comes out in May. I've already read it as one of the I had a galley copy of it and read it, but that has really influenced me. That ministry has influenced me more than really anything else. And so between Tim Elmore and Growing Leaders and Ransom Heart Ministries, those are the two big influences on my life that have, and I've gone really deep with these organizations.
Yeah.
I've gone so deep to say that, like, I know these people personally and their friends, and, I've got their phone number in my phone, and I could text them right now. And, and it's because I've been following them and reading their stuff and attending their events for 15 years. Right. And so, that's my encouragement is, don't go wide, go deep.
I could not agree more. I want you to leave us on, what about some practices? What do you do that some of our folks could learn from in terms of, do you wake up in the morning? Do you meditate? Just whatever comes to mind, or practices of things that, I make a list, whatever hack you want to give our audience, I think they'll appreciate it.
Yeah. So I have this little book right here that I created. It's called my monthly trail guide.
Yeah, I'm a big hiker. Are you a hiker?
I used to be. I don't hike as much anymore. Right. Of course, I was in the Army and I hiked for a living. So
yeah, you've got your quota.
Forced hiking. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I created this, and it's really a book of creating habits. And so, write down my goals in here. And then I go through this process of gratitude, weekly, thinking about the things I'm grateful for. I actually go back through my phone and look at my photos and write down the things that I'm grateful for. And that really keeps me in a positive mindset. And then, I create filters. So what are my growth filters? And I name those filters. And then as things pop up in this wildly distracting world that we live in today, if it doesn't fit in that filter, I say, okay, either no or not now, or, put it aside. Like, it really helps me stay focused. And then I have weekly or daily, which is like my morning routine. I have my evening routine, my weekly routine, and my monthly routine. And so that's all in here. And I use that. I carry it in my back pocket, and I use it daily. And it's a process that I use that has made me very productive. And
also clears your head. I knew you would have some great stuff with your background. I knew you had to have a process to keep things straight. Well, Zach, I really, really appreciate it, and I've enjoyed chatting with you. For the audience, we're gonna post Zach's information, so if you want to connect with him on Twitter or email, what have you, we'll have his information there. And Zach, it's really been my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
And until next time, remember, the experience is either random or intentionally curated. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Curated Experience with Amos Tanuma. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll join the conversation online by visiting us at curatedcx.com or at amostanuma.com. That's curatedcx.com or amastenumah.com. And please invite your friends and colleagues to visit our website or iTunes, where they can check this and previous podcasts. This has been a Bien LLC production. Check us next time for another edition of The Curated Experience.